I welcome the participants to the session on approaches to tribal development in India. Tribal development is a subject which is being discussed among personnel of higher ranks, statesmen, administrators and academia for over 6 decades. During this period, it has become a subject which drew serious and widespread concerns and pronounced attention from several quarters, ranging from policymakers, from various development planners, from academicians, and providing material from all of them for the tribal development. The builders of modern India took the task of development of the tribal people and their integration with the mainstream of Indian society as one of the problems of the nation building. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, for instance, to develop along the lines of their own genius, and further assured that in no case should there be any imposition in the name of their development. The statement of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Pre-independence, there were certain approaches, that is the tribal policy since the time of the British. If we analyze it, during the British rule in the pre-independence period, most of the tribal communities in India remained isolated from the mainstream of the national life. Tribal areas were kept scheduled and cut off from rest of the people, and the policy of British government was solely directed and dominated by the colonial interest and based on isolation and exploitation of the tribals. If we look at the approaches of the tribal development, we can divide it into 3 categories, that is the isolationist approach, assimilation approach and integration approach. The isolationist approach, it manifested in the form of British designating the tribal areas as excluded areas based on the principle of non-interference. The assimilation approach, this believed in mainstreaming tribes and their culture, completely eroding their culture completely by making them accept the mainstreaming culture. And acceptance or denial of necessity for assimilation with the Hindu society is ultimately a question of value, and in the past Hindu society had been tolerant to these groups that would not conform to the standards set by the higher caste. The integration approach, that's the government of India has adopted a policy of integration of the tribes with the mainstream, aiming at developing a creative adjustment between the tribes and non-tribes, leading to a responsible partnership. Now, if we see the approach of Elwin, the major exponent of isolation approach, he was of the view that the tribals should not have contact with the outside world. He maintained that no one should be allowed to meddle in their way of life, and he expressed his explicit and bold anthropological view regarding the future of the tribes for the first time in his monumental monograph on the Vega of the central provinces. Now, this tribal development approach found support in 3 important policies or theories. First is the policy of isolation or segregation, second is the policy of assimilation, and third is the policy of integration. And this policy was highly propounded by A.V. Thakur. J.S. Ghurye is also a protagonist of this policy, and whose main objective is a constant assimilation of the tribes, and as a result of constant contact of the tribals with the rest of the Indian population, the effort of social reforms towards the development. The policy of integration is the outcome of the serious research activities undertaken by social anthropologists in India, and the main objective is social integration and cultural assimilation. Now, after independence, the constitution has given the tribals a number of safeguards by considering them to be the weaker section of the population. There are mainly 5 approaches which have been employed so far for the welfare of the tribals in India. The approaches are political, administrative, religious, voluntary and anthropological approach. The religious approach, with special reference to missionary approach, has been attempted by different religious agencies like Christian missionaries, the Ramakrishna Mission, the Arya Samaj and other local religious approaches which are engaged in the welfare works for the tribals. And the Christian missionaries have been active in the tribal areas. For both types of work, spiritual and material, the missionaries did realize the importance of understanding the tribal culture and language, and missionary welfare activities have been viewed by different persons in different ways. The voluntary agencies approach, and under this voluntary agencies approach, social workers, social welfare agencies, social movement agencies and social reformers etc. are working to uplift the tribal weaker sections of our society in their own ways. These voluntary service agencies have done considerable humanitarian work in the tribal areas, but their idealism and spirit of service have not been matched by their understanding of the tribal organization's values and the problems. Anthropological approach, this believes in the ultimate integration of the tribes into the mainstream of the national life. After independence, some anthropologists came out with several papers and addresses dealing with the importance of applied anthropology in tribal welfare programs, and the various tribal research institutes are engaged in conducting research on scheduled castes and tribes. Besides, many universities departments in the country are also undertaking these kind of research studies for anthropological intervention and development of the tribes. Now, if we look at the Jawaharlal Nehru's 5 principles for the tribes, Nehru was fascinated by the spontaneity of tribal culture and the capacity of joy and heroism in spite of their appalling poverty and destitution and ignorance. In Nehru's view, the process of modernization must not be taken as forcing a sudden break with the tribals' past, but help them build upon it and grow by a natural process of evolution. That is quote and unquote tribal philosophy of Pandit Nehru. Now, Indian policy at the time of independence and the tribal Panchashil that was given by Jawaharlal Nehru will be discussed in depth when we take a longer session. Now, there are certain constitutional provisions for tribal development in India. One is protective safeguard, that is educational safeguard, Article 15, 4 and 29, safeguard for employment, that is Article 16, 324 and 333, economic safeguard, that is Article 19, abolition of bonded labor, Article 23, protection from social injustice and all forms of exploitation, that is Article 46, political safeguards, that is reservation of seats for scheduled tribes in Lok Sabha and assemblies, that is Article 330, 332, 164, appointment of minister in charge of tribal welfare, special provisions in respect of Nagaland, Assam and Manipur, Article 371A, 371B and Article 371. Developmental safeguards, that is promoting the educational and economic interest of the scheduled tribes, is Article 46, and grants from central government to the states for welfare of scheduled tribes and raising the level of administration of scheduled tribes, Article 75. So, these are some of the approaches, the status, the assimilation, integration and mainstream, and the ministry's various development policies will be discussed vis-a-vis the articles of the constitution for development of the tribes. So, I thank the participants for being in this program. Thank you.